Sound check for everybody there. So, and by the way, that was a hardware problem. I'm more of a software person, to be honest with you. So, hey, I'm super excited to be here. The cloud custodian is certainly near and dear to my heart. I'm going to walk you through a little bit of my journey in the cloud and how it relates to cloud custodian, and more importantly, how it relates to you as you move forward. It is exciting times to be a part of this journey. And I think everybody here is on a journey, whether you want to or not. You might be a reluctant hero as part of this journey, thrust into the limelight within your organization and kind of like, hey, here's where we want to go, go solve that. And it's nice to be a part of a community that is helping to solve some of the biggest problems out there, today. So let me go ahead and kind of walk you through a little bit about my journey, again, how it relates to cloud custodian. I'm Drew Firment. I'm Chief Cloud Strategist at Pluralsight by way of acquisition of A Cloud Guru. And prior to that, I spent a lot of my career at CapitalOne. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well. And super excited to be a part of, again, this community. I mean, Stacklet has just been an amazing organization, and kind of see where they're going. I don't think they'll be far behind, A Cloud Guru as they scale their organization as well. So let me go ahead and walk you through a little bit here. So my cloud journey, spent 20 years in technology. At the end of the stint at CapitalOne, 20 years, if you want to call that a stint, I spent a lot of time in their cloud program, their Cloud Center of Excellence there. So I was director of cloud operations. I earned a patent for measuring cloud maturity. I had a lot of leaders asking me every day, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? So I ended up gathering a bunch of data via APIs and visually displayed that to help inform our organization, where we were on our cloud maturation. Along the way, I did learn a pretty valuable lesson that, ultimately it has little to do with technology, and it's all about people. And I think that that's really important here today. As we are talking about cloud custodian, I think more important than cloud custodian is the community around cloud custodian. That's really what makes it vibrant and thrive. And so your contributions to that community, even participating in this, is really fundamental to be able to move forward as a collective as we look to solve some of these bigger problems out there. So I did become Dean of Cloud Computing at CapitalOne. I owned third level support. So there were a lot of people spelling AWS WTF when we were first starting off there. So some of these injuries that I experienced might seem familiar, to everybody here. And there's a lot of pain going on right now with cloud adoption, similar, to this. The lift and shift hernia sounds very, very painful. And for folks that aren't really kind of looking at doing more cloud native type of modernization with their apps, they're just taking, the crap that they built in data centers and moving that crap into the cloud, does not make a transformation, right? But a lot of what you're seeing here is normal for many organizations as they go through that trough of despair, as they're trying to go ahead and capture a lot of the value and the ROI out of cloud. But there's a lot of barriers and challenges with that. For me personally, I ended up joining A Cloud Guru in the early stage with the brothers Ryan and Sam Kronenberg to really go on a mission to teach the world of cloud. And that continues to be my mission. I do have a lot of passion around this and helping connect the dots to help not only individuals move forward, but organizations move forward. And for me, it's pretty exciting to be part of the Pluralsight journey as well. So, back to a little bit of CapitalOne, right? Early on, 2014, ish, Cloud Basic CapitalOne declared that, hey, they're really focusing on cloud computing, not as sort of a technology science project, but as a business strategy. I think that's really important to keep that in mind as you go, throughout the day today. And we talk about cloud custodian and how it can help overcome the barriers to not just technical challenges, but really organizations are trying to achieve a business strategy. And it just so happens they're using the power of the cloud to be able to eliminate a lot of that undifferentiated heavy lifting to be able to move the organization forward closer to really, customer value, right? How do you go ahead and deliver speed to market and innovation? And you hear a lot about that, from, CapitalOne and other sort of leading organizations that are trying to leverage cloud computing again for business value, right? It's not the big eating the small these days, right? It's the fast eating the slow. So how do you accelerate that journey to be able to capture, that ROI? And there is a lot of money being spent on those journeys, that you all are on as well within your organizations or individually. There's a lot of effort in cloud computing and a lot of dollars being spent. Worldwide, it's approaching $600 billion on end-user cloud computing services. It's about a 20% growth clip year over year, and it's becoming more and more of the overall IT budget. So growing from about 17% to 45 and going to be 50+%, very, very soon in terms of the overall strategic value within an organization and how it relates to the spend that organizations are putting into cloud computing. Again, not as just some science project of like cost control or just trying to reduce cost, but how do you get there in terms of ultimately delivering business value? So a lot of money being spent on cloud computing, right? As a matter of fact, Pluralsight and A Cloud Guru partnered together and went out and did this state of the cloud report, and we just recently released it. This is not surprising, right? 75% of organizations are building new features in the cloud and products like that's they're kind of all in on cloud computing. My only question is, what's up with the other 25%, right? At this point, it seems kind of Captain Obvious, right? I would try to find the other 25% and maybe short their stocks, to make a few quick bucks on that, because they're going to have a hard time moving forward in this type of environment. So most organizations are, moving forward in the cloud as by default, right? I mentioned before that cloud is a business strategy, really, maybe replace just for purposes of this conversation, business with complex. Cloud is a complex strategy, right? Organizations that are, spending a lot of money on cloud, that are all in on the cloud, are starting to consume a lot more cloud. Well, as their footprint increases, so does their complexity, right? And there is a lot to manage. And this is what you're going to be spending the day talking about today. And this is really what's in the way of achieving that ROI, right? Obviously skills is a big part of that. That's my passion. That's my mission. But everybody here in this community, cost, compliance, overall sort of health of our, footprint within the cloud are barriers to achieving that ROI. So there is a lot at stake as we're on this journey. We're in that trough of despair, and you're really sort of creating this community of heroes to be able to pull these organizations out to that other side. And it's a pretty exciting time. So it's exciting to be a part of this community as well. What's making it even more complex is it's not like people are like, oh, I'm going to go ahead and consume cloud computing, in 2020 and whatever the cloud that we happen to have in 2020, we're good. That's it. We're just going to kind of stick with this cloud right now. I'm not going to worry about all the announcements coming out at, Google Next or Microsoft Ignite or reInvent at AWS. We'll just ignore those for a little while and we'll just stick with what we have. No, I wish it was that easy in some ways, right? This is an Oracle, right? So things tend to move forward a little bit quicker clip there. So right now you got about 62% of leaders that, as soon as that technology is available, they want to go ahead and implement it. So it just continues to drive that complexity associated with, the implementations of these cloud providers. So when you look at when organizations, as part of this state of cloud, when organizations were trying to figure out, like, well, what defines success for us when we implement these environments with cloud computing? And so look at those top two. right? I mean, near and dear to this community's hearts, right? These are massive barriers. They're massive barrier in skills, and there's a massive skills gap. But as you know, I mean, there's an opportunity to go ahead and leverage the power of cloud computing, to help resolve some of these things, specifically, the security skills and cost skills, right? Those are things that are near and dear to the cloud custodian community, right? So when you look at implementing successful programs, keep in mind that these organizations are really looking for ways to go ahead and solve security and compliance as part of their governance process to be able to achieve that larger sort of business strategy. So, in terms of being well positioned, cloud custodian is right at the crust of success here. My lessons, when I was at CapitalOne, again, I was director of engineering and operations, which meant I owned third level support. And there was a little bit of the theater of security that my team was going through to try to fix stuff, right? And we were all new to the cloud, like many organizations, back 2015 and 2016. And there was, I guess the biggest lesson is wishful thinking, doesn't really work, right? Oh, I wish this would be resolved. I wish we could just go in and write a script to, help encrypt all of our buckets to make sure that we're compliant. Learn very, very quickly that, it's not just automation, but it's automation at scale. This isn't sort of there's this legacy mindset, that I brought into that role. You can go in and sort of use the old ways to try to fix things in this new world. And, that doesn't work. The concepts of, code as compliance is extremely powerful. And it really caused me and the organization to take a step back before we can kind of take those 10 steps forward. So, as I mentioned before, I earned a patent for measuring our cloud maturity. And what you see here should be very, relevant to what's going on in cloud custodian. So what I looked at was really three things: how much we were moving to the cloud. So that's the bubble size. So the bigger the bubble, the better you are, right? So you want big bubbles, right? And your y-axis was really well architected sort of framework. Things like basic things, even from a compliance perspective, let's just say encryption or multiple availability zones, how are you managing your resiliency, your tagging strategy, which is a big part of what tracking. And then your x-axis would be their cost management, what your efficiency of your different workloads in there. So that was sort of a starting point. This was just sort of the visual display of that. There was a lot when you kind of double clicked onto it to get the details. But basically, big bubbles, top right was good. Small bubbles, bottom left, not so good. Well, we had a lot of small bubbles in the bottom left, and we were spending a lot of money on it, right? And it was very difficult to figure out, how to get the workloads from bottom left to top right, especially when everybody was spelling AWS WTF at the time, right? So this is really where I ended up spending most of my time, not in the huddle room, but the fetal position room, right? There was this need for control. And a need for speed, right? How quick we need to accelerate, through this. So all of those things, operational controls were so important from a governance perspective. The security policies. I mean, being a financial institution, obviously that was really important to us as an organization. Obviously monitoring your limits and how does that tie to cost optimization? All of that really was a difficult challenge for us organizationally. And this is what a lot of other organizations are going through, currently, right? I mean, these were lessons learned a while ago. The community has evolved a lot since then. Cloud custodian has evolved a lot since then, but organizations are still trying to pick up what is being thrown down. So we need to, get this out there as quickly as possible, be able to help get them out of these fetal position rooms as well. So this is kind of where, how I met your mother kind of thing and how I met cloud custodian. As my organization was going through, trying to solve this stuff, I heard there was some distinguished engineer that was out there doing some really cool stuff, and I had a chance to meet with Kapil. And I was like, well, if you think you have something better than my team can do, I'd love to see it. And he showed me the early stages of cloud custodian. I was like, okay, let's get this going and roll out as quickly as possible to our organization. It was pretty amazing. I kind of giggle at this comic a little bit, only because you look at cloud custodian from a serverless architecture perspective, an event-driven architecture is really powerful and very early on in terms of very innovative in terms of what it delivers to organizations and how it's architected and how it can scale, right? But that was really such a critical point for our organization as we were going on this cloud journey, that it allowed our teams to be able to focus on things that were much closer to the customer, right? I mean, that's kind of why you go to cloud computing. You're getting rid of undifferentiated heavy lifting when it comes to pulling cables and patching and things like that, right? Well, didn't necessarily, want a whole bunch of developers having to figure out everything to do with encryption and tagging strategies and all that good stuff as well. So having an automated policy rules engine coming in and be able to take care of a lot of that heavy lifting really freed up just a ton of resources throughout the organization to be able to drive our transformation, forward. So I will give you a little bit of insight, just for a little bit of giggles here. I did find this is the original logo that we put internally at CapitalOne. Keeping the cloud clean since 2015, right? The OG here for sure. And it's, if you notice a little, that dude has the bucket is like an S3 bucket, kind of keeping things clean, mopping the cloud with the S3 bucket. So Cloud Custodian has obviously come a long way since then as well. Much cooler logo right now with that transformer thing, which is pretty sweet. But this community has come just amazing to see the growth of this community, the growth of the tool, what everybody is doing to be able to contribute to this community. And it's really exciting to be just a little part of that story. I think that this is sort of the key message, right? Is like when you look at the next generation of cloud governance, right? This is really where folks really have to understand that this is about codifying policies. This isn't about getting more consultants in and having PowerPoints with, CMM, red, yellow, and green maturity assessments and things like that, right? How do you go ahead and codify those policies, leveraging the power of cloud to amplify that feedback, in terms of those controls and automatically correcting those actions? That is so powerful, especially the scale of it. I mean, as you're using cloud computing within these enterprises at scale, right? To have some superpower like Cloud Custodian to be able to go in there and manage that fleet without even breaking a sweat is really a remarkable feat. So super excited again to be a part of this community, and I think organizations will benefit a lot from really rethinking how they're doing governance and having Cloud Custodian be a part of that. And ultimately, right, this is what these organizations are trying to achieve. They're really trying to get to the point where CapitalOne is where it's shut down all the different data centers, right? Now they're operating 100% in the public cloud, right? That's the goal. Well, I don't think CapitalOne could have gotten there, without leveraging something like Cloud Custodian to be able to ensure that as they move to the cloud, that they're doing it in a very, very well managed and governed way using Cloud Custodian underlying their operations. So, I think that's the goal. And I think this community and this tool is going to be a big part of how folks are rethinking governance as they move forward. So as you're enjoying yourselves today, right? I would say, Cloud Custodian is the push that you need, right? So, as you're contributing to Cloud Custodian, as organizations are considering Cloud Custodian as part of that, I do think it's a great opportunity to get involved and listen to what others have to say today, and experience some of the goodness of Cloud Custodian within your organization as folks rethink their governance. So I certainly appreciate the opportunity to help kick things off today. You got just amazing lineup of individuals, a lot to consume today. So have at it and keep being awesome. Appreciate the time.
Great. Thank you so much, Drew. I think at this point, if you can take a few questions, like George mentioned, I think we definitely got the t-shirt idea for Custodian as well. So thank you for sharing that. Any questions for Drew? I think one question someone mentioned earlier was, if you go back in time and you had an implemented custodian and you're looking at it for the first time, what advice would you give to someone who's looking at using custodian for the first time?
Well, I think now it's a lot different. I think I wish I had the community, to be honest with you, and folks to kind of bounce things off of. I mean, we didn't know what we didn't know at that point, right? So we had to kind of generate our own cloud custodians across the different organizations. So every organization within CapitalOne, every division kind of had their own cloud custodian. And then they were as a federated model so that they could kind of become the stewards of their accounts. And really, we had to build our own community and kind of get the feedback with what was working, wasn't working within the organizations. And that became a powerful sort of feedback mechanism, right, to be able to help with the backlog of the things that we were looking to implement. So I think that's probably still true within the enterprises today. Is there's an external community for sure now, but you got to build that internal community, right? You have to build, identify individuals within your organization that are going to lean into this, and as you're applying it, to be able to get that feedback loop, so you can get that buy-in and get those champions, and then start celebrating those successes as well, and then bring that back out to the external community. So ultimately, just don't feel like you got to go, at it alone, right? There's a lot of folks out there right now. So that's huge to be a part of that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Another quick one. Can you describe how cloud custodian policies were approved at scale? Was a Cloud Center of Excellence team voting on these policies?
Yeah, initially, I think this is a really key point. I think when most organizations are starting off in their cloud journey, it makes sense to have a Cloud Center of Excellence that is bring the best and the brightest and, the pioneers, the SEAL Team 6, right, across security and networking and compliance, whatever, into the Cloud Center of Excellence. And, especially as you're really getting started with establishing the architectural patterns, the policies for cloud custodian, and as you're getting going. So, you got to start somewhere in terms of those guardrails, specifically like in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs of like, thou shalt, must do these things from an OCC perspective, from a compliance, audit perspective. As you start growing, and as you start, driving skills development within the organization, I kind of look at it, ultimately, the goal is to become the dumbest organization, the dumbest department within your organization. You really want that Cloud Center of Excellence to turn into a Cloud Center of Enablement, and ultimately a Cloud Center of Operations, right? As you kind of move through the evolution, because, if you are skilling up 500, 1,000, 5,000 other engineers, and you still think that your group of 20 or 50 folks are the smartest people in the organization, well, you're kidding yourself, right? So as you start moving to that Cloud Center of Enablement and you start federating out the policies, I think that's when you really are starting to probably find some things that you would have never thought about, and you have to be open to those ideas, because you really want to be ultimately curating from the community, right? I mean, if somebody is doing something different than what you originally intended, I think a poor pattern is to go and provide some punitive conversations to them and say, oh, this is how we can, this is how it's supposed to be done. This is how we told you to do it. So go do it this way. What are you doing? You're in trouble. Versus, hey, you're doing something a little bit different than we had thought about. We probably didn't know then what you know now, and you're a little bit closer to the business. I'd love to see why you're kind of deviating from those patterns. And if that's something that makes sense for others in our organization, I'd love to learn from you, bring it back into our Cloud Center program, and then harden it and then redistribute it to others, right? So I think early on, yes, I think from a Cloud Center of Excellence makes sense. As you move forward, I think it's really important to federate and curate once you have that sort of critical mass of cloud fluency throughout your organization. You're on mute. And it's 2022, so I'm going to call you out on that at this point. You know what I mean? When you're still on mute, so it's all good.
Yeah, I know we're over time. I'll take one last question. Would you be able to raise expectation and raise risk for any policy and exempt them from regular checks?
Say that again. Would I exempt people from policies and regular checks?
Would we be able to raise expectations and raise risk for any policy and exempt them from regular checks? I think he's asking about exception management. I believe we can do that in custodian.
Yeah, that's probably a more specific tool for cloud custodian. I mean, if you're talking about like, is there any apps or anything else that should be exempt from cloud custodian? You know, nobody's above the law of cloud custodian. I mean, you saw the logo, the transformer. You know, that's like it rules all, right? So, you know, I mean, that's the nice part about that. You know, the rules from a policy engine. But I think that you could do things in there. There's different sort of levels of, you know, how do you want to, you know, go ahead and shut something down? I mean, we had like, you know, Kapil used to talk about the concept of tire striping, right? I mean, some ways, if somebody didn't tag something, you know, you might have initially said, oh, you're not, you know, sort of Adrian Cockcroft, sort of Chaos Monkeys from Netflix, you know, the concept of, hey, if it doesn't have something correct, like not tagging, we're going to delete it and it's gone. Well, that might be a little bit extreme in a development environment. I mean, I'm all for it, to be honest with you, but, you know, a little bit extreme. So maybe, you know, you want to start off with, hey, I'm going to tire stripe that. I'm going to sort of provide them a notice and say, you might want to go ahead and tag it. We'll give you like 3 more notices over the course of the week, right? Maybe at the end of the week, when it's finally not, tagged, then we'll go ahead and stop those services, you know, before we end up deleting them. So I do think that there's sort of a tiered approach to that as well from an exception perspective.
Great. Thank you so much, Drew. I know we're up the hour. There are a couple more questions, but we'll try and answer them. Maybe Kapil and George others can enter some of the specific custodian questions. They're still in the chat. But thank you so much, Drew. I hope you can hang out with us a bit more. I know you have a busy schedule, but thank you so much.
I love it. It's a great community. I'm looking forward. Hopefully we'll see some folks at, you know, some of the conferences, certainly be at reInvent. Stop by the A-Cloud Guru Pluralsight booth, you know, say hi or whatever, and then we'll catch up for a bunch of other stuff. But certainly, you know, feel free to hit me up online on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever is your jam. Enjoy the rest of the day. Such a great community. Really appreciate the opportunity to share. I'm glad you like that logo, but you all have evolved a long way since then. So, you know, not only keep being awesome, but you know, keep the cloud clean as you move forward here. So I appreciate you all. Have a good one. All right.
Thank you.
Cheers.